Hey there folks, welcome to the Sky This Month presentation for November 2024. This will be my first Sky This Month as Observing Director of the HAA, and I'm looking forward to and very excited to be giving you these presentations each month for the next calendar year. Unfortunately, as you can tell, I am unable to be here in person tonight, so I decided to pre-record this presentation for you guys, and I'm going to be giving a sort of virtual night sky tour on Stellarium. And in the future, if I can't make any meetings in person, then this is what I will be doing. Obviously, I will try my best to be there at the general meetings in person, but if not, then like I said, it will be virtual Sky This Month presentations. So before we get to Stellarium, just going to share some photos with you all here, which were shared to me. All three photos this month come from newly appointed Counselor at Large, Chris Zabin. Now the first one that we have here is Hines Variable Nebula. This is NGC 1555 in the constellation Taurus. And this is a really neat image that Chris captured here because you can see in the center right there, the little orange patch, that is the Variable Nebula. And obviously it gets its name from the variation in brightness, which is caused by the little orange star right here in the center, that is T Tauri. And that is a variable star, so as it changes in luminosity, so does the brightness of the nebula around it. And Chris took this image on October 5th at Bimbrook with a Celestron Nexstar 6SE and an ASI 294 MC Pro camera. Next image here, also from Chris, is a beautiful, beautiful image of the Pac-Man Nebula. And the Pac-Man Nebula, NGC 281, is an emission nebula located in Cassiopeia. And this image is particularly nice because you can see that deep red color of the emissions in here, and you can see the dark dust clouds and dust lanes and dust blots out here obscuring the nebula behind them. And wonderful pinpoint stars all around, and all around a really great image from Chris. And this was also taken on the same night with the same camera setup. And finally, Chris's third image is the familiar Pleiades M45 in Taurus. And he captured this one beautifully as well. You can see the nice deep blue and white wisps of a reflection nebula in here, and the familiar Seven Sisters stars here. Beautiful image from Chris. Thank you for sharing. And if any of you have any images or videos or sketches or any stories, anything you want to share with me to put in the Sky This Month presentations, then please, by all means, send them over to me at observing@amateurastronomy.com before the end of each month, and I will try and share them during my Sky This Month presentations. And if it's an image or whatever you send, give me as much detail as you can, what camera setup you used, where you were at, what you were looking at, anything interesting that you noticed, and I will relay that to the membership and share it for you here on the Sky This Month. So without further ado, let's go over to Stellarium. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Stellarium, it is a night sky app, and it is free, and it is a wonderful, wonderful application that you can use for all manner of different stargazing and astronomy purposes. And it's not the most intensive or in-depth one you can get, but I would say it's probably the best free one you can get, and definitely has the easiest to use interface and is definitely the most straightforward to operate. So I have Stellarium here set for Hamilton, Ontario, obviously, as we are the Hamilton Amateur Astronomers, and I have the time set for tonight at 9:30 p.m., just around when you'll be walking out of the meeting. So actually this is what the sky is going to look like tonight, and I will go through a brief tour of the night sky in a little bit. But what I'm going to do is start off with the planets. What you can see, or rather, where you can see each planet this month from now until the next meeting in the middle of December. So we're going to back it up a little bit down here to right around sunset. So here we have the view looking west from Hamilton at 5:30 p.m. tonight, and it'll be the same for tomorrow and the next few days. And sunset is at 5:01. So here is the view looking west at sunset. Now we have the moon right over here hanging in the southern sky. Oh, nice quarter moon there. Zoom out a little bit. And we're going to start off with Mercury. First planet closest to the sun. If I search Mercury in here, we can see that for the next few days, Mercury will be hanging very, very low in the western sky around sunset, rather the southwestern sky here. And again, this is right at 5:01, and it is hanging quite low. Magnitude 0.17, which is fairly bright. And this is going to be a tough month to try and pick it out. Your best bet will be to go right as the sun is setting with a clear southern and western horizon and try and pick it out of the twilight sky right around sunset. You'll probably, well, not probably, you'll definitely need either a pair of binoculars or a scope to find it. It'll be a tough spot for most of this month, so we will continue on to Venus, which as you can see here is far brighter and far better placed for this month in November. So here we have it. Let's skip back to tonight's date, or rather we'll go to tomorrow night's date. And you see Venus hanging there in the western sky, southwestern sky. And it's very noticeable. You step outside at sunset and you'll see it there, no problem, naked eye. You'll be able to pick it out right away. And as the month progresses, we keep going further on, you can see that Venus is actually slowly rising further and further in the sky. And just after the sun goes down towards the end of the month, beginning of December, it will be up for at least a couple hours after sunset. So that'll make for some very nice views, either in your binoculars or in your telescope, or if you're trying to capture some wonderful sunset images. So keep Venus in mind. And actually, before we move on, we will actually take a look here on the 4th of December. December 4th, here we go. You can see, oh, there we go. Right around 8 o'clock or so, after the sun goes down, there's a nice conjunction here between the moon and Venus. Nice slim crescent moon down here and Venus just above it. And so that'll make for a nice viewing opportunity. That is December the 4th. So, moving on from Venus, we will go to Mars, which at the end of the month, or middle of the month, is rising right around 9 p.m. And the later on in the evening we go, towards the early hours of the morning, you can see 2, 3 a.m. just how high Mars is and how well placed it is for viewing. And it's going to be hanging high here, very, very high in the southern and southeastern sky all month long for you to take a look at. And after midnight, when it rises high enough, it'll be hanging up there for you to take a look at. And we'll continue to provide viewing opportunity for you all the way until sunrise. So moving on from Mars, next in line we have the king of planets, Jupiter. And Jupiter, as I mentioned in the EH article, is having a particularly impressive month. So Jupiter is up, oh, forgive me here, Jupiter will pretty well be up all night long, especially towards the end of the month as the sun goes down. Jupiter will be rising, and as you can see, it's hanging high there in Taurus for the entire night. So well placed right now for binocular and for telescope observing. And of course there's the famous Galilean moons, which you can see here. Even over the course of an evening, you can watch them slowly change their position as they orbit around their host planet. My bad. And keep an eye out, of course, for the many different transits of their shadows across the disk of Jupiter. Obviously, you need a telescope to see that, but many different opportunities for that over the course of the month. And as I also mentioned in the EH article, since Jupiter is at or nearing opposition, which means it will be directly opposite the sun in the night sky, it rises at sunset and sets at sunrise, which towards the beginning of December gives it almost 15 hours up in the sky, and most of that is at night. Now Jupiter does one full rotation around its axis in 10 hours, which means that over the course of one evening, you will be able to watch Jupiter complete one full rotation. So as long as you have a scope here, which is clear enough and high powered enough to pick out individual details on the bands, you can indeed watch. See a great red spot right here? You can watch the planet rotate around and do a full 360 in the course of a single month, or a single night rather, sorry, which is pretty cool. And I'm sure if you pick a good night, there are many resources online where you can find out the exact timing of the Galilean moons and when they'll do a transit across Jupiter, or when their shadow will do the same. So take a look into that and see what you can do. See if you can get some nice photos or some nice views of the transits, and let me know next month if anyone decided to do that and stay up all night long and actually follow Jupiter to do one full rotation on its axis over the course of a single evening. Now moving on to Saturn. Saturn as well will be favorably placed this month for observing opportunities. You can see here it's hanging high in Aquarius over in the southern and southwestern sky. And it's about magnitude 0.9, magnitude 1. And all month long, we are given an opportunity to see Saturn's famous rings, which right now are tilted around 5 degrees from us, which is definitely not the largest tilt that they have, but it's also not razor thin right on edge. So with a good enough scope, you should be able to pick out some of the details and some of the gaps here in the rings. And now, of course, the moons of Saturn are not as bright, not as easy to pick out as the Galilean moons of Jupiter. But nonetheless, Titan is a very bright one, very easy to see. And then you have a host of other moons all around it. And those also too. Ooh, my bad. Let's go back here. Those as well, over the course of an evening, you can actually watch them slowly move around in their orbits. And before we move on from Saturn, on the night of the 10th, let's zoom out here, we are going to have a nice conjunction here between the moon and Saturn high in the southern sky. So right now it's set for 8 o'clock. But if we fast forward a little bit, 9, 10, you can see right here Saturn comes within about 1/10 of a degree from the moon. So it's a very close conjunction. So keep that in your calendars for Sunday evening around 10 p.m. If we have clear skies, go out and take a look and see this lovely conjunction that we have right here. Moving on to Uranus. Also placed well. Now there's nothing particularly impressive about Uranus this month in terms of conjunctions or in terms of alignments with anything, but there it is, high up in the night sky, around magnitude 5.64. And if you have a large enough scope, 8, 10 incher, even 6 incher, you might be able to pick out some of its moons, and you might be able at very high power and really good seeing to pick out and see its light blue disk here. Now finally, heading on to Neptune, which is also placed very well in the sky over here in Pisces. Now Neptune is a lot fainter and a lot harder to pick out and break with a scope, magnitude 7.72, and a very tiny disk. But again, if you're rocking a big scope, you might be able to see that very small blue disk, and you might just be able to pick out Triton here, which at magnitude 13.47 is certainly a challenge object. I've seen it a few times in my 10-inch Dob, and it is certainly pretty cool to see because that's not a sight you will often find yourself looking at. But most people tend to skip past Neptune for the most part, but let's fast forward one night to the 11th. And would you look at that, funny enough, as you can see, right there behind the moon is Neptune. Let's zoom out here. So over there in Pisces, around 10 o'clock, looking towards the southwest sky. High in the sky, you have the moon and Neptune. So that will be on the 11th, which is Monday evening. Now this occultation, of course, obviously occurs when the moon passes in front of Neptune in the sky. So we'll back it up a little bit here to Sunday night, the 11th, just after 9 p.m. And you can see right there, right at 9:09, it'll disappear behind the dark side of the moon. And we'll come out on the other side just around 10:22. So that presents a really, really cool opportunity for you to go out there and actually just see Neptune go behind the moon and come out the other side. So mark that down in your calendars as well, this Sunday evening, or rather Monday evening, 9 o'clock. Go out there and see if you can see the occultation. So all in all, a very good month for the planets. And with some luck, you might just be able to see Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all in the same evening. Now, while we are looking at the moon here, let's talk about the moon. So, new moon was on the 1st, full moon will be on the 15th, and last quarter moon will be on the 23rd of November. Which means that during the middle of the month, so next week and the week after, unfortunately, and you can see there, unfortunately you will be, for the most part, washed out by a nice high full moon, very bright. But as we move on towards the end of the month, especially towards the weekend of the 22nd and the 23rd, as we're approaching new moon again, you can see here around 10 p.m. that the moon has set and that we have nice dark skies. So that would be my advice to you, is if you're planning on doing any deep sky observing for this month, you wait until the end of the month, weekend of the 22nd, 23rd, and the 29th and the 30th, and the week in between when you have that very slim crescent moon which isn't up in the sky. So I will set the date for the 22nd. The 22nd is a Friday evening, right around 10 p.m. and take you on a quick little tour of the sky here for November, which is going to be the same pretty well for the whole month. As you know, it doesn't change drastically over the course of a month. So this is what your sky is going to be looking like from now until the next meeting. So stepping outside 2 weeks from tonight, beginning in the west, we have down here still the summer constellations, Lyra, Cygnus, Delphinus, Sagitta, and you can still pick out some of those summer targets which have been up since the spring. Go a little bit further back, it's placed high enough that you might be able to pick out some NGC and Messier objects over here in Cygnus, and the Ring Nebula here in Lyra. Now moving up towards the zenith, which is definitely the most target-rich area of the sky for this month. We have the fall constellations Cassiopeia and Perseus, Andromeda, Triangulum, Pegasus, high towards zenith all night long, and moving down towards the east, we have the winter constellations, which are going to be rising higher and higher as the month goes on. Orion and Gemini and all those famous areas over here, Auriga with Capella, Jupiter hanging there in Taurus, the Pleiades up here, a whole host of objects which you'll be able to see. So, let me briefly take a look through here. Again, Friday the 22nd, 10 p.m., looking straight up above you. I wrote about it in the EH article, and this is a particularly good area for binocular observers, for astrophotographers, for telescope observers, for variable star observers. It's a really nice area which is packed full of a host of objects which you can see. And I'll be honest, I'm not even really familiar with a lot of the names that they have here. Stellarium has a tendency to put very colorful names on the deep sky objects. We got the Baby Nebula, Jolly Roger cluster, Sailboat cluster, Cassiopeia Salt and Pepper cluster, the Swimming Alligator cluster. Let's check that out. Honestly, never heard of that before. Don't think I've ever seen it before. But you know what? Right here on the fly, why don't we make that one of the challenge objects for this month, NGC 7160, the Swimming Alligator cluster, or the Bruce Lee cluster, which is an open star cluster, magnitude 6.1, so it should be fairly easy to go and find. Doesn't look particularly impressive off of Stellarium, but you know what? Somebody get out there over the course of this month and take a look for it. Looks pretty easy to find here in Cepheus. Report back to me what you've seen. And honestly, if you hop onto Stellarium, I would love to hear some stories from any of you to see if you can find any of these very interestingly named objects here. I know the Elephant's Trunk Nebula is definitely not something easy for visual observing, but here we got the Wizard Nebula. We have the Iris Nebula, the Funnel Cloud Nebula, the Cocoon Nebula, North American Nebula. Some of these obviously are a lot more famous and a lot more popular astrophotography targets. But again, this whole area in the fall constellations up here is very, very well placed for November. And there's a lot you can see here just taking your scope and scanning back and forth between Perseus and Cepheus and the tail end of Cygnus here. So, that will be my Sky This Month presentation for November of 2024. And again, I would love to hear anything that you have to share with me, especially with some of these objects that you see on a screen right now. Write down some of their names: the Sailboat cluster, the Dragonfly, the Baby Nebula, the Lawnmower cluster. Go out there, take a look at them, see what you can find, and send in some pics. send in some notes, send in some sketches, and I will share whatever you have for me at the next Sky This Month presentation. And so in December, we have our Christmas social, which I unfortunately don't think I'll be able to attend in person. So I'm going to do another one of these virtual presentations, but what I think I'm going to do is a lot quicker of a night sky tour, and I'm going to run out a list of different objects for you folks to try and hunt between our meeting and the new year. So I hope to see you all at the Scope Clinic on the 16th. And if not, then I will be back to give another presentation at our December Christmas meeting. So thank you so much, and that is the Sky This Month for November 2024. And also I should note too that I am not the most tech-savvy guy, so I will try my best to get an external microphone and a bit smoother mouse here, so that it's a little bit less jolty and the audio quality is better if I have to end up doing one of these virtual presentations again. But go out there, take a look, scan around the night sky, and please report back with what you find. Thank you.